there's a tendency for people to mystify the Eastern cultures. And no mind simply refers to switching off the discerning, the picking, the choosing, the labeling. You're still thinking, but you're not intellectualizing what's coming through the ears, what's coming through the nose, what's coming through the eyes.
That is Shinkan-ryu Kenpo founder Saneteru Radzikowski, and this is episode 11 of the Ikigai Podcast. Find your Ikigai at ikigaitribe.com. In this episode of the Ikigai Podcast, I'm speaking with Stephen Radzikowski, founder and current head instructor of Shinkan-ryu Kenpo, a unique style of classical Japanese swordsmanship. Stephen has been practicing various forms of martial arts for 26 years, and he's also been teaching for 20 years. Stephen's dojo is headquartered out of Nara, Japan, and the dojo's teachings are centered on the authentic and correct swordsmanship of pre-modern Japan and the spiritual development and character refinement of the swordsman. Stephen, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I stumbled upon a YouTube video of you explaining Mushin no Shin, the mind of no thought, and I found your explanation very insightful and helpful, and it was the reason I decided to reach out to you. So you appear to have a deep understanding of Buddhist philosophy as well as being very proficient in classical Japanese swordsmanship. And that's something we will discuss in this podcast episode. But before we do, let's get a little bit of history about yourself. Where are you originally from, and when did your pursuit of martial arts begin?
Originally, I'm from New Jersey in good old USA. And in 2010, I moved to Japan. But I guess I started martial arts around 1993. I started with Tai Chi Chuan, Yang style Tai Chi Chuan, and then it was around 2003. I stumbled upon a Kendo dojo, and I just started Kendo from there, and then Iaido as well. And then when I moved to Japan, I deepened my study here as well in those arts.
And so, when did you move to Japan?
September of 2010, I moved.
Okay. So you moved from, what was that martial art? Tai Chi, no?
Tai Chi Chuan,
Tai Chi Chuan?
the Chinese martial art. Yeah, it's an internal Chinese martial art.
So that's using no weapons?
Well, they do have weapons. They have a fan, they have staff, they have sword, they have spear. There are weapons in the art. I didn't get too involved in the weapons. Just a little bit of staff, a little bit of saber. There's two style of Chinese swords. There's a single-edged, like the katana, like Japanese sword.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a double-edged sword, which I played around with. But mostly a little bit of fan, a little bit of staff, and the Yang style family saber. I did that too. It's the single-edged sword.
I see. And so then you discovered Kendo, and I guess that was your first experience of swordsmanship, and then it sounds like it led you to moving to Japan.
Well, yeah, I don't know I don't know how I got to Japan exactly, what the catalyst was, but I think maybe if I didn't get involved with Kendo, I wouldn't have really looked at Japan initially. So it's probably safe to say that it was Kendo that kind of got me moving in that direction, almost literally.
Yep. Okay, and I've checked out your website and done a bit of research, and you have studied Yaijitsu, Jojutsu, Kendo, and Kenjutsu. Yeah. Are they all forms of swordsmanship?
Kenjutsu and Yaijitsu is swordsmanship. Kendo is the sort of modern version of Kenjutsu. So Kendo, Kenjutsu, and Iaijutsu, they're all sword. Jojutsu is the medium staff. Uh, it's just over like a meter long. And what else? Yeah, and then with the sword, there's short sword as well as the long sword. Swordsmanship is pretty much swordsmanship.
Okay. So is the Jojutsu, is that the staff with the blade at the end?
That's naginata.
Okay,
That's
so
that's naginata. So there's Jojutsu has no edged blade on. It's just a hardwood staff.
okay, I didn't realize there was staff
Mm,
fighting in the Japanese martial arts.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. The staff forms.
So that's quite a lot of martial arts there. What do you think attracted you to the swordsmanship of martial arts
Oh.
instead of judo or karate?
There's something about so my initial foray was into swordsmanship was kendo. So immediately there was an aspect of having a partner, and that was one thing I kind of took to in Tai Chi Chuan. Like people think of Tai Chi, they think of this old guy with a long gray beard and he's dancing around the park, or some lady. Um, and Tai Chi is that, but it's also an internal martial art. Um, and through my time doing that, I just kind of fell into this love of working with the energy of somebody else, which deepens the understanding of when you're working with it solo. So that kind of carried over when I went into kendo, and immediately, well, not immediately. In the beginning, I was doing a lot of solo drills, just doing these kihon, and these fundamentals
Yeah.
without a partner. But then once you start sparring, I got to use the air quotes for sparring.
Yeah.
Once you start engaging in those matches and you're working with somebody else, it's like a big light gets shined down, and you notice a lot of things about the waza, the techniques, and stuff like that. So that was really, um, yeah, that's kind of it's a hard question to answer.
All right, so let's talk about your Budo name or your
Okay.
Bume. So your Bume, I should say,
Mm.
is
Right.
Saneteru. Is that correct?
Saneteru, hi. Yes, that's correct. Saneteru.
And that's I guess your sensei name and your Budo name or your Bume.
Right, right. So that's my martial arts name.
So that's what
Yeah,
I'm asking. Is it a warrior name or is it a teacher name? Can you explain what it really means?
the Japanese have a long history of flipping their names for all sorts of occasions. They come of age, they attain a rank, they join a clan, or they become a monk, or there's so many times, and somebody's name can change, 5 times in a lifetime. Um, I don't. It's not, and other cultures too have that name change, and of course when you become, for example, even nowadays in many cultures, if you become a monk, I think most people are familiar with that. You become a monk, a Buddhist monk. Either your teacher gives you a name, and you kind of go forth into that new life with that new name. You almost never use your kind of birth name again. Um, there is something useful about. It's not exactly reinventing yourself, but it's sort of dropping a new anchor in your life. You still have the original anchor where you came from, but then through your voyage, as you go through and you kind of become a different person. I mean, we're all different people. Um, you drop a new anchor. For some people, maybe it's changing their careers. Um, but for me, I decided to adopt the use of my bugo or bume, which is Saneteru. So that name comes from my Buddhist name. which was Sacharatna, which means like the jewel of truth. So Saneteru means this is a very hard thing to translate, but one who disseminates or spreads the the truth. In this case, the truth being like the Dhamma, what the Buddha taught. Not necessarily religious, but just the truth about the universe, the universal truths of what reality is and what reality isn't. That was a very long-winded answer, but
Okay.
that's kind of that's kind of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you just mentioned before we started recording that you were studying to become a Buddhist monk in the
Right.
States.
Yes, I in 2002 kind of dropped what I was doing, and I was involved with temples and supporting monks and doing all kinds of things for them. And then in 2002, I just had this desire to kind of leave the lay life and go into the, the holy life or the Buddhist way of life and living at the temple and then a monastery. But after about a year, I decided there were things I wanted to do. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was pulling me, but I wanted to do something non secular. So
Now that we've touched on that you have this name and you are actually teaching martial arts in Japan, so let's talk about your own school or style of swordsmanship, which is Shinkan-ryu Kenpo. This is actually a style of swordsmanship you founded, and you obviously felt a need to create. So, what was that need to create a new style?
it is something I'm hesitant to kind of talk about because there's a hint of I don't know uh, I don't know big headedness or hubris to say that I'm going to start something new. Um, I was very careful in doing this. It wasn't a goal of mine. I kind of fell into it, but I wasn't completely at home um, in the arts that I studied. There was something missing
Mm-hmm.
for me. It's not that the techniques were lousy or anything like that. I felt like there was more things to be fleshed out. Um, so it's not that I created a completely new style, but I embellished and expanded on what I've already learned. And there's a danger in doing that where you can change a recipe too much, or you can put too much or take something out to take a lot of things out, and then it doesn't resemble anything what you're originally making. So I very carefully constructed things and added things on. So it's not a completely whole new style, uh, but and it's still evolving a little bit. I mean, all these arts are still evolving, even the ones that quote unquote haven't changed over 300 years. They're not the same as they originally were.
You do describe what Shinkan-ryu Kenpo is on your website, so I just might read a
Right.
passage. So,
Sure.
Shinkan-ryu Kenpo takes the ideas of munen, which is non-worldly thoughts, which is a Buddhist concept, and attempts to pierce the fog of mental constructs to show the real truth of our minds and the world. The techniques of the sword and mind are shared at the same level. One does not develop only the sword without the mind in the true tradition of Shinkan-ryu Kenpo. So your aspect of swordsmanship or teaching swordsmanship seems to have this deep connection to the development of the mind based on Buddhist concepts or Buddhist philosophy.
This connects to your question before.
Yeah.
What I find lacking a lot is that, when you look at martial arts, you see the technique. That's what everybody sees. If you walk past a demonstration, you see the physical movement, you see the positive space, but there's a lot of negative space that not you're not seeing. and that's the character development and the spirituality aspects that are not all schools and not all teachers ignore it. I don't want to act like I'm the only one doing this, but um, it's really important to incorporate that in the training. Well, I think it's important.
Yeah, I think it is too. And so you have a school now with this pandemic and us being forced to spend most of our time at home. Thankfully for you, you invested in teaching online as well. And you have, I think you said you have at least 500 videos
Yeah,
showing techniques and philosophies, and some of them are very detailed. You go into what actual part of the blade hits a target. You
yeah.
explain all these. I was learning all these new words because you're explaining that the end of the sword, the three sections on the blade. They're really good videos, both in quality and how you
Thank you.
explain things.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, I definitely think it's be worth checking your school out if any of our listeners are interested. So why did you? Most people would probably think, it'd be too hard to teach swordsmanship online, and you do both. You teach it in person and online. So do you want to talk about how you do that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to just take a step back from that first and say, my goal wasn't to teach online, actually. That wasn't my goal. I had started with a student in Tokyo, and because of my, I don't know what the word is, I was very visible with the things going on in Japan with some of the classical schools and stuff like that. I had a large following, and some people had seen me demonstrating some things on video, and they wanted to learn. So I started just posting some lesson videos semi privately, and then I had gotten contacted from a couple of people abroad. They really wanted to learn. I just said, well, I might as well do that. And then I started doing it with not much of a belief that it was going to evolve into what it has. But I found, due to, I have to give myself credit because it's not easy to do this online. And as I went through, I realized, oh, I actually can have some success at teaching people through the internet. And it's worked very well. I mean, I feel like I've had a lot of success with teaching people, and some of those people have come to Japan and practice with me face to face. So I could see what they do even in person, not just through video. And a lot of them come from having no experience, and it's been pretty good. It's very exhaustive work. I have to say that because I'm I'm creating a very intimate relationship with each student. Their progress is like corrected at every turn. They're not practicing by themselves, so I'm sitting in this seat quite often reviewing videos and sending feedback. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a learning experience. When I first started, I certainly didn't do it as well as I do now. I'm still learning, better ways to teach online, but it's turned out to be a good thing. I mean, before it was a good thing because it's hard to find this type of style or school near anybody. I mean, even in Japan, if you don't live in like Tokyo, the chances of finding like an interesting school is very very low. People think that you throw a stone in Japan and you hit a dojo. Like people have this image, that there's all these old masters all over the place. But um, so I think I've given people the ability, the opportunity to learn what I consider, a decent sword style.
All right. Well, let's touch on this idea of no mind or no mind without thought. So as I mentioned, the reason I reached out to you was this video you have on Mushin no Shin. So could you explain what that is?
There's a tendency for people to mystify the Eastern cultures. There's a tendency for the Japanese themselves to mystify their own, right? Their own culture.
Yeah.
Um, but Mushin translates to Mushin no Shin. Mushin comes from Mushin no Shin, which means the mind of no mind.
Mm.
And no mind simply refers to switching off that the discerning, the picking, the choosing, the labeling. You're still thinking, but you're not intellectualizing what's coming through the ears, what's coming through the nose, what's coming through the eyes. So the no mind, that mushin, is simply kind of turning off all of that judging and labeling and everything, and just unfiltered things are just passing through the system, our nervous system.
Okay. So yeah, so it seems to be almost this relaxed state of mind where there's no judgment or fixation on anything. But as you said, often these terms are greatly misunderstood, or they're made out to be very difficult to attain, or it's something that you can only do when you're meditating and
Right.
you've reached a certain proficiency in something. So I'll link to the video so people can watch that. So yeah, when we last spoke, we did discuss Ikigai, and as you know, it's greatly misunderstood outside of Japan, and we both know for most Japanese, it's not something they really think about or discuss that much. But your pursuit of classical swordsmanship and obviously your dojo, your online school, seems to be your Ikigai in the sense that it gives you daily purpose, it connects you to people, and it is something unique to you, and it gives your life meaning. So in that context, would you say Shinkan-ryu Kenpo is your Ikigai?
Yeah, I guess it turned out to be that way. I don't do what I do to get rich, which is either fortunate or unfortunate. I don't know. Um, but I wake up every day. I'm glad I can talk to my students. I have a sense of fulfillment that I found that kind of harmony in like my life and my work. They just sort of meld together without distinct boundaries.
Yeah, the more I explore the Ikigai, the more I'm understanding it to be. Often Ikigai, finds you, and it's not one thing. You'll find it, you'll lose it, it'll change over time, it'll change as you grow, and it's not a goal. It's not a goal to reach. It's a place to begin from, and it's really about this daily purpose. And in a world where we're so distracted and so fixated on material things or status or social shares, we seem to be moving further away from Ikigai. And then we've also got this concept or this Western interpretation of what it is, which is almost the complete opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you that whole thing with I think we talked about that too the other day.
The Venn diagram. Yeah.
The Venn diagram. Yeah. And the moving ourselves into this. It's been a problem before the internet, but this problem with the massive amounts of information, and that create a deficit of our attention. We don't have enough attention for the amount of information that we gorge ourselves on the information, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or TikTok, or all these things that are coming up. It's okay to do once in a while, but they just suck they really do just suck our life just away, and that these things are, this is precious. We can't get this stuff back, and like for people that want to have that, oh, where is my ikigai? Like you said, it ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. It's a fluid thing.
Mm.
But you'll never get a step closer to these concepts like ikigai or mushin or whatever without putting the phones down. I tell my students all the time, don't spend all your time on the internet, even though they have to spend time on the internet to learn, with me. But it's a danger that needs to be addressed. And I think it creeps up on people, like I said, that it's important to mention again that things that you're not aware of that are kind of drawing your attention are really taking your attention away from other more important things. And our mental health suffers for that.
There is some irony in that Ikigai exploded thanks to the internet and I guess an image of a Venn diagram, and sort of the irony of people maybe online, either, whether it's on a podcast or, I mean, a podcast is a conversation, so I think they're a positive thing. But if people are sharing their Ikigai on Facebook or Instagram, I mean, I started doing Instagram thinking, and this is really not Ikigai. Me putting these quotes together and putting up 2 or 3 Instagram posts just for the sake of getting some exposure or branding, and I just thought this is not. This is the exact opposite of what I should be doing. So I decided to stop that. So we end up moving further away from our purpose or our goal because it's because of social pressure, or it's what everyone else is doing, but all those, you would think most people who are following others on Instagram or Facebook, you wonder, how creative, how happy, how comfortable are they on a daily basis? And because that's where we want to be.
No matter what our religion is, right? You have to be concerned with what's happening now.
What I've realized is there's this message that you've got to be the best version of yourself, and all this positive psychology, all these quotes that's what you're aiming for. And I almost fell into that idea of, maybe that's what Ikigai is about. But then I kind of worked out probably more related to being the honest, try to be the most honest version of yourself, meaning try to be who you are. And if you do that, you will find Ikigai in your life, and you'll know you'll found it when you wake up to sort of purposeful living. And it's not this ridiculous image that you're jumping out of bed and beating your chest, but you just wake up and you feel, I've got purpose. I enjoy my daily life, and if times are tough, I can get through them because I've got purpose. I've got a sense of service to other people, and usually it'll be unique to you. And what you've created is unique. You've got your own style of swordsmanship. You're in Nara, Japan, with your online school, and you teach a unique way. So I think what you've achieved is a really good example of Ikigai, and you're very humble, and I'm glad I reached out to you.
Oh, I'm glad you did too. Yeah.
Stephen, thanks so much for coming on to the show, and I'm sure we'll stay in contact, and hopefully,
I hope so,
next year or whenever we'll meet in person.
Yeah, if you come by, Osaka or Nara, let me know. Definitely. You're welcome anytime.
All right. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ikigai Podcast. To download Ikigai worksheets, to take the Ikigai questionnaire, or to join the Ikigai tribe, please visit ikigaitribe.com.